we're going to be discussing something that's perpetually talked about on the internet when it comes to Islam, and that is the subject of Taqiyya. Okay, so you're terminally online. What is the scuttlebutt about Taqiyya?
I think there's a perception in the let's call it the non-Muslim world, right? The X space or Twitter space or Insta world or whatever, the meta, right?
Metaverse.
The metaverse, right? I wish somebody would just go sometimes. That built in and inherent in Islam is the God-given right to lie, to promote Islam, right? So Islam at all costs, and then when you combine that with jihadis and all of these other groups, there comes this perception of particularly from like opposing forces. Let's just right wing media, whatever, right? Even among Christians, you hear this a lot. Like, well, you can lie in Islam. You can they're just gonna come here and they're gonna say they're peaceful, but they're not, and they're gonna lie about it. And then when they have power, they're gonna take power from us and displace us and everything else like that. So the concept of Taqiyya comes up quite a bit, and some of the content creators out there spend a lot of time talking about this. So I think it's important to know where it's really coming from.
This episode is sponsored by Taco Bell because right now it's seasonal. It's seasonal. Taqiyyas are actually in stock at Taco Bell. So what a taqiyya is, it's a small meal item from Taco Bell where they don't tell you it's halal meat, but it's secretly halal meat.
All right, we skip lunch. Food is a sore subject.
So, Sharjeel, growing up as what do you call yourself? Salafi growing up?
Sunni.
Growing up as a Sunni Muslim in Pakistan. Did anyone ever use the word Taqiyya with you at all ever?
No.
So why, this is pretty common with Muslims I talk to, right? People don't even know what the word means.
Yes.
Maybe they're just performing Taqiyya on me.
Well, let me clarify a few things. So in the Taqiyya is more dominant in Shiites, right? It's I think the roots comes from more, because we have to understand this before answering this question, that when it comes to implementation of Islam, Shiite sources are different than Sunni sources, right? Shias believe not in Sahih Sitta. Sahih Sitta, I mean 6 books of hadith that Sunnis believe, right? Shias believe in their own books, which are Usul al-Kafi and other books, right?
Nahj al-Balagha.
Nahj al-Balagha and so on and so forth, right? So I think in there somewhere, because I have not read them, right? So I cannot be 100% sure where this Taqiyya comes from, right? But I have not seen Taqiyya in Sunni Islam, right? Why I'm saying it is you are not supposed to lie. God says clearly in Qur'an that Allah do not like those who lies. La yuhibbullahu al-qazibin. God do not love those who lie. So if Quran is stating something, doesn't matter what secondary source you bring forth. If it's contradicting the primary source, you cannot consider the secondary source as your source of inspiration. So that's my take on that that particular thing.
And just to clarify, even within Shia Islam, my basic understanding of what Taqiyya is that because Shias are a persecuted minority throughout Islamic history, the idea is you can deny your specific Shia beliefs in order to fit in and not face persecution when dealing with the majority society, right?
Yeah, that is also true in Sunni Islam. So to avoid persecution like where you fear death, that is the only concession. Where you fear death temporarily. It's not that you can change and adopt certain things. Temporarily, for the sake of escape, right? Just as a tactic, you can use that. But that is conditional. But on top of that, there is another layer. For example, if you are a Sunni Muslim, right? And if you face persecution, then you will be happy to be persecuted as a Sunni believing Muslim because you are a shaheed. Shaheed is martyr.
Right.
You died in the cause of God, and you died in the name of religion. So you're granted the highest ranks in Jannah. So that's why you won't see a lot of Sunni Muslims, doing Taqiyya. But again, I am not so much informed on Shia sources, so that I don't know.
Let me ask you a question. Does it change? Is it solely directed in the modern sense, right, towards dealing with like outside Western sources or whatever? Because I feel like that's the perception, right? That Muslims don't lie to each other, right? They don't use this on each other. It's they don't commit taqiyya towards each other. It's specifically reserved for like the infidels or whatever.
I think there's two things we need to understand. If you're in act of war, then you can use skittish tactics. You can deceive, and it is mentioned in Quran as well that you can be. If not, I'm not sure. I'll rephrase my statement that it is mentioned in Islamic sources that you can use tactics to deceive your enemy, right? But that is specific to act of war. But in act of peace, you cannot, even though it's non-believer, if it's Christians, Jews, or Hindus, or whoever it is, right? You are not allowed to lie to them. And its the biggest example is Muslims used to do in the time of Muhammad. There were Jews living in there, and Ali borrowed his armor from a Jew and then returned it. And so there was a kind of trust. Trust means, yeah, I trust your words, you trust my words. That's why we are dealing with each other. At that time, the word was a big thing. So to say that taqiyya in the modern sense, the way it is used, I think that is not coming from at least Sunni sources. Sure. I would say that.
So the way it kind of works in the American mind is that there are large numbers of Muslims who are kind of like part of this jihadi ideology. They move over to America. Then they act like they're super moderate with the goal of getting power. And then when they have power, that mask will fall off and the true, jihadi nature of it will come out.
Right. Or the perception kind of going along what you're saying. So if your concept of jihad is reestablishing a caliphate, then and you use taqiyya, right, until there's a caliph, right, until there's a caliphate. So therefore, it's okay to do it all the time. You know what I mean? And not like in the moment.
Yeah, I mean, like if you're a spy for a country, an Islamic country, and you're coming in and
spies are spies.
It's right, and you're just trying to hide your identity, then it's a completely different game. That's geopolitical issues and all those things. But purely speaking from scripture perspective, we have to understand two things here. That West is considered Dar al-Harb. Dar al-Harb means that it is not allowed or not recommended for Muslims to come to West. According to the pure Islamic scriptures, it is not recommended. I'm using this word again, that is not recommended for Muslims to go and live in a country that is not Muslim, where the Islamic law is not, if Islamic practices are not performed. So it is not recommended to come there. So if you do come out of some whatever causes are, if you're persecuted in the land, then you can migrate. That's the only condition. And when you migrate, you have to migrate to Darul Islam, not Darul Harb. So coming back, If you come to the United States and if you change your identity and it is because you're facing persecution, severe persecution in your Darul Islam number one and in Darul Harb, that's the only condition you can change. Otherwise, it is not allowed in Islam. It is not proven from any sources in Islam that you can hold on to your secret identity for so long and then come off like, poof, I am,
Right. So in my experience in meeting Muslims in America and England, you do have some people who are trying to like downplay certain things and look more respectable in the eyes of the West, while secretly kind of holding beliefs which are a little bit more, socially unacceptable. But the people who are like really hardcore, like borderline extremists, can't do that.
Yes.
Like they don't have the ability, they can't contain themselves, right?
Yes.
Like they don't have that kind of like, long game. It's like,
Okay. But what about the like 11 Saudis? This is the Saudis that's not that like were took over the planes on 9/11, right? So that's a long game.
yeah, it is a long game. So sure, occasionally you're going to have people who are like that, who are driven by a specific ideology and who are smart, but that's an exception rather than the rule, right? Those kind of things need to be dealt with by intelligence agencies.
Sure.
It's not, that's not your Muslim neighbor, most likely.
Absolutely.
Right. I mean, one person listening, maybe, but for the most part, that's not.
Get off then.
Yeah.
And also that, like, having that kind of sentiment around our neighborhoods is caused a mistrust. Well, not a big trust. Mistrust. I was like, oh, he looks so moderate. He invites me, but deep down inside, maybe he's one of those. So you cannot trust. So I would say, no, do not go with this approach. This is not the right approach.
I'll be honest with you too. Like I see some of these like Christians who get into the rap battles, where they like different YouTube channels and stuff like that, where they're misrepresenting what Taqiyya actually is, like, and they're projecting it onto Muslims that they're having an argument with about, like, whether the Quran or the Bible is accurate. So I don't want to name drop. There are several of them out there, and in the end, you just throw your hands up and say, "Well, you're doing Taqiyya," like Taqiyya enables you to lie to me, like that kind of stuff. And listen, that's obviously not what we are.
Yeah, I get. If people watch this video, I guarantee you will get at least a comment saying that we're all just Muslims doing Taqiyya. So it's like, when what I'm not saying here, I'm not saying.
Don't tell them, bro.
Yeah, I'll complain back you.
Look at all this stuff. It's obvious. Did you know this is Arabic?
Yeah.
But so it's not that there's like
It's actually Amish.
Amish Taqiyya.
it's not that there's no problem to deal with. It's not like there are not like nefarious Muslim actors in the world.
Sure.
But the problem here is much, much more complicated.
Right.
And what I'm not saying there's no Muslims who are trying to like sneak past the radar, who aren't trying to ruin the country.
Right.
What I'm saying is that the average Muslim doesn't go to Taqiyya class at school where they're briefed on like the group plan.
Yeah, I mean, my aunt, my mother, unless they were doing Taqiyya, I mean,
Yeah.
Now I feel like Charlie Day in front of the board. None of them, that's not in the matrix of their thinking.
Yeah. I think to wrap this up, I would say Taqiyya is, again, a lot of things are coming into the modern culture, which have no roots in reality. Of course, in Shiaism, it can exist or it cannot, but most of the Muslims out there are Sunni Muslims. And I'm not discounting the Shias from this account, but from Sunni perspective, and most of the terrorism that is done, unfortunately, comes from Sunni Islam. Shias are responsible for very less terrorism overall, or terroristic ideology. So in Sunni Muslim, Taqiyya does not exist unless specifically you're tasked to do, as you mentioned, 9/11. That was all pre-planned, right? So that's the answer.
Yep. So in closing,
Just saying that that was a military op more than it was a.
Yes, it was an operation.
yeah. So in closing, that I think the idea of taqiyya, the way it's used in the West when dealing with Islam, is trying to solve a complicated problem with a conspiracy theory. And conspiracy theories are not going to solve complex problems. So do not be afraid to go to Taco Bell and order your taquiyyas today.